Hey, what is up, everybody? Hope you guys are here and can see me okay. If you are, just let me know. I am Eric. I am your software developer today that I'm going to be talking to you from here in Reno, Nevada. So if you're in the chat, just say hi. And if you're on anywhere else, just let me know. I'm Eric CH on Twitter. Cool. So today I thought I would talk to you guys about software development. Yeah, can hit the like button. Definitely do that. So today I'm going to talk to you guys some ideas that I have about software development, about how to create good software. We might look a little bit into Amplify, a project I just created in Svelte. I don't know. We'll just kind of jump around a little bit. Sup, Brad? Sup, Akil? Thanks for joining the stream. Also, anytime you guys have any questions, feel free to jump in, and we'll take a look at it. I think I'm going to do a little bit of presenting today of my screen. So let's do that. I need to add. I'm going to do some presenting. So I'm going to do a share a screen. I'm going to do my entire screen. Cool. So I already have a question. Have I tried Framer AI? No, I haven't. Have not tried Framer AI. Sounds interesting. I've never done it. So I was going to talk a little bit about VueConf. So if you're in the channel, let me know if you've heard of VueConf and what you think about it. And I'll talk a little bit about it. So I just got done. I did a workshop, or actually I spoke at VueConf, which is really cool. If you look at the VueConf, there's me creating Amplify UI Vue 3 open source library, which was a talk that was all about, it was really all about how you can create like open source tooling on Vue, which was like super duper fun. I've never done anything like that. Was it worth going? Yeah, I'll get into that. So let me tell you guys a little bit about VueConf for those who don't know. It's held every year at a different location. This year it was in New Orleans. Hello from Bulgaria. Hey, Ilian, thanks for joining. And it changes. Like last year it was in Florida. I went in 2019 and it was in, where was it? No, I went in 2020 and it was in Austin, Texas. It was kind of funny. 2020 was a weird year because it was the year the pandemic hit. And they had their conference in March right before all the shutdowns happened. So like the conference itself had a lot of people that like just didn't show up. It was like kind of a low turnout. On top of that, they had like all these guidelines to like make sure you don't get close to somebody, make sure you use like don't shake anybody's hand, fist bumps everywhere. And I remember like the organizers of the conference all wore these like dinosaur outfits, and it was just kind of a funny time to go to a conference. That was 2020, but this year 2023, everything's back again. 2022 it was in Florida, so it was back then. 2021 it was canceled, and I think it was only online. So I got in around it's a 2-day conference. It's really 30 days if you count if you look at the schedule here. They have a workshop, and I think this was on May 24th. I think this was on a Wednesday. And then Thursday and Friday was day 1 and day 2. So I actually got in the day before the workshop, and I got to hang out in New Orleans. It was really neat. I got to walk around. I went to Cafe Du Monde and had a beignet, which is like this really crazy powdered donut. I don't know. Anybody have a beignet? Yeah, it looks like this. Like these crazy, delicious powdered donuts. So I ate a few of these, and they were delicious. Then I went to, and then after that, I kind of just explored a little bit. I had to do a little bit of work, but on day 1 was the day I did my talk. And I was just so impressed with all the speakers. One thing I would highly recommend if you go to conferences is just to talk to as many people as you can. So I'm gonna start a next CaliDraw here. Oops, I don't want that. I'm just gonna go to, how do I get a new one? Open, save to. I could just start typing, right? Yeah. So I'm gonna give you guys some tips for conferences. As you're interested, I think I can make that bigger. Yeah. So first tip of conferences is talk to everyone. So that's what exactly I did. So I went there. I talked to as many people as I could. I was, it was like amazing. I got to meet so many people, like pretty much all the speakers here. I got to at least chat with for just a minute. Adam Jar. I met Ben again. I've talked to him several times. Alex from View School. Evan Yu, I got to talk to. I talked to Daniel Rowe and Daniel Kelly from View School again. View Masteries Adams. I talked to Homer. Yeah, so it's just really cool to just talk to as many people as I could, and just as a speaker, but also if I was just an attendee, I would do the same thing. So I would highly recommend that to everybody that goes. The first day I was there, and by the way, yeah, feel free to interrupt me if you have any questions. I pretty much just watched the talks, and then during this right here, this lightning talks, it's 110, this is where I went and I did my talk on how to create an open source library using Vue. I think it went well, but looking back, there's some things I could have done better for sure. It definitely wasn't perfect. Like some things that I think I could have done better was just I'm just still trying to like find the right vibe when I do conference talks to make sure that things like just go smoothly. And I feel like I need to work on my storytelling a little bit, have a nice beginning, end, beginning, middle, and end, kind of like the hero's journey. So that's something that I'm still working on. But that was really fun to get up there and talk to in front of everyone. I was super comfortable. I'm also just working on my stage presence, like being able to talk directly to the audience, not having to look at the slides all the time. I've definitely done that where I just kind of read off the slides, and that's not the greatest point. So I'm still working on that, but I think for the most part, it went well. I was happy with it. And then I got to spend the rest of the conference just like talking to people and just hanging out. So, by the way, I met Mark. He's from Cyprus. Really excellent talk to there. I met Homer. Every time you want to hear anything about accessibility, check out Homer Gaines. Like this guy is amazing at accessibility. Then I got to learn a little bit of Vite, how to monitor your production apps. I remember both these; they were great. And then this is really neat thing they did at VueConf is they talked about the second line. I know. Let me know in the chat if you know what the second line is, if you ever heard that term or not. So it's basically a way inside for conferences. Well, let me Google it. This is a nice thing about being live here. I'm just going to Google second line. And so it's like a parade in New Orleans where they have a main line and a first line. And it's the first section of the parade. So it's like almost like a parade they did. We all met at this bar right after the first day of the conference, and we had a couple drinks, and then this jazz band came around, and they're like, everybody meet outside. So we all met outside, and this is funny. It's like 100, 200 geeky guys and gals just walking down the street while this jazz band played in front. And then we walked all the way down like a block or two to our after party place, which had food and drinks and an open bar and everything. And that was really, really cool to go and hang out with. And all the speakers were there. Evan was there. Like everybody was so open to like just answer questions or just hang out. And that was really fun. So if you've ever in New Orleans and you can join a second line, I would try to do that because it was pretty neat. I don't know. Hold on, let me see here. And then that night I had dinner, I came back, and then they had this conference reception, the Howling Wolf with live music. I didn't go to this, but back at the hotel, I think this Howling Wolf was at the hotel. They had karaoke. So everybody was playing karaoke. I watched. I apparently Evan Yu is amazing at karaoke, and I missed that part, but it's just kind of a fun time for people to unwind. I was really tired, so I just went back to my hotel room. But that was like the first day. Then the second day, I got up early. Nice thing too is at breakfast they had big round tables, so I just met with a bunch of random people. We talked, and then I just watched the talks. Alex's and Adam's were always really good. Adam has amazing visuals anytime he does talks at VueConf. I also watched Cecilia. Always does a great job explaining Ionic, conquering views. I learned more about forms. John Leader with the next Vuetify team. Like Vuetify is pretty big in the Vue ecosystem, so that was really cool to listen to him. And then this one was like my favorite talk of the whole conference, and he basically creates apps for bands like Foo Fighters, Metro Boomin, Lord Huron, Florence and the Machine, and so he was showing the apps that he's created, and it's just crazy. I don't know if he has it up on his website. But they were essentially just like really neat apps that he's created with his company. So they do like AR or VR type apps. He told us about an app where everybody kind of got together. So you would like log into this web app. It's created with Vue. It would connect you with a random person that also logged into the web app, and you would be in this room together, and you guys could talk. It's all safe for work stuff. So he just creates all these really neat apps using Vue, and it was really cool. And he also played music, so that was kind of like a highlight of the conference, at least of all the talks, because it was just kind of really different. And then we did the PowerPoint karaoke, which, if you don't know, PowerPoint karaoke is like an improv game where participants give a presentation for a slide deck you've never seen. So that was exactly as you imagine. It says there, they had like all the speakers go up at the end, and then they had this like randomly generated PowerPoint, and everybody had 5 minutes or about 20 slides, 15 seconds each to like make up a presentation, and it was just hilarious. So I highly recommend like these fun things at these conferences, especially at the end of the day. When you've gotten to the end of the second day, you're just so tired. I mean, I don't like conferences that have talks all the way up to like 6 o'clock on the second day of the conference, because you're just so tired and you just seen so much. But this is a nice way to end it, like a little bit early, have some nice like fun activity. And then they did like a raffle, and I've been to 3, 4. I have never won anything in these raffles. They give out like hundreds of prizes. I have never won ever. So one day I will win, I think. Maybe. We'll see. So that was VueConf. Highly recommend going. Well worth going if your company can pay for it. I'm always like weary to recommend people to go to conferences that they can't pay for, because I feel like that's not the best. So that's kind of my experience, though. I was going to give you guys some tips. I think I have some tips I can show you. Hold on a sec. Let me see. I think I have other tips, like conference tips, while we're at it. Let's see here. Let's see here. Okay. Some other tips that we can talk about. So one first tip, if you go to conferences, talk to everyone. I think it's well worth it. Second tip. So have your work pay for it. So I'm going to put this right here and like move around here. Conference tips for developers. So if you're watching this, here we go. Okay. Have your work pay for it. And then this could also be, so here's some tips, because I just went to a conference and these are all on the top of my head. If you can, have your work pay for it. And if they can't pay for it, see if you can work out a deal where they can pay for half of it. I really don't think that people should go to conferences, especially developers, and pay for it themselves, unless it's like in your area. It's not that big of expense, but going across the country, spending thousands of dollars, I don't know, like you're really going to have to make it worth it. So definitely work with your employer. There's also templates. So look for, I think VueConf had it too. I don't think it's up anymore, but if there was like convince your boss templates, yeah, convince your boss. Need help convincing your boss on going to VueConf? We got you covered with this template. Check out this like template. I always think it's funny, but you can basically print this out and be like, "Dear my boss, I would like to request approval to VueConf. Advantages: learn on industry leaders during design better processes, inspire new ideas. My personal advantages, blah 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 blah." And then you can give like a breakdown of all the pricing. I think it's like kind of a novel way of doing it, and I've seen more and more conferences doing this like convince your boss thing. So if that's interesting to you, I've definitely used the template, especially if your boss is like, I don't know, yeah, maybe this is one way to push them over the fence. Now I know things are a little tighter in a lot of companies right now. I know. Let me know if the chat if you've ever had to convince your boss to like let you travel. Do you guys travel for conferences? Love to hear that. Okay, where was I? Okay, so this is, yeah, that's the second tip. Always have your work paid for. If you can't, make sure you can maybe do some split deal. Another tip is when you're at a conference, don't take work meetings. Sometimes you can't get out of this, but I've seen so many people who go to conferences and then have to like right in the middle of the conference, right in the middle, like 9 a.m. to 10 a.m., they have to leave to take a conference call and then they come back. Try to avoid that if you can, because your work paid for you, hopefully, to be there, and you should spend all your time there and not worry about things at work. Obviously, take notes, take things like that, but don't like have to, continuously come in and out of the conference. Now, when someone told me this once, is that they went to a conference where they had a room specifically to like work. So some people go to conferences and they just do the hallway track, which is where you go into a conference and you kind of don't go to the talks as much, but you kind of hang out in the hallway to talk to other people. But during the day, you might go to a special room and then work. And there is some advantages in that, because I was talking to someone else and they're like, well, they have special work rooms at conferences for people who have to do work at conferences. But the nice thing about it is you work with other people. So maybe if you're at a Vue conference and you're stuck on a Nux problem, maybe there's a Nux developer in the room that you're with and you can ask them for help. So I guess that is a thing. I have never been to a conference that has that, but I could definitely see where that would be like an advantage. So I'd say for the most part, see if you can't. But if you do have to take meetings, maybe you do try to find one of these workroom places that if you can get help. And I'm also saying like in between, like after the conference is over or in between different talks, if you need to run in the hallway and like work on something and you want to talk to someone nearby, I think that's the perfect time to do it. I just feel like you're wasting time if you have to take like meetings. So that's my tip number 3. So tip number 4 is go to the after parties, events, things like that. It is so easy, and I am an introvert, and this is something that I struggle with. Is after I go to like a Vue conference or any kind of conference, I go to the conference during the day, and then it's like 5 o'clock. I'm a little tired. I'll go back to my hotel room, and then I'm like, I just want to like grab a quick bite to eat, and then go back to my hotel room and just work or just hang out. And it sometimes it takes me a little bit more effort to be like, well, there is an event going on. I should go check it out. Part of going to any conference is meeting people. And I would say, even if you're by yourself, it's well worth like just heading over, going outside, going to where the other people are meeting, maybe check Twitter to see if anybody's organizing dinners. That's another thing. Don't feel bad or don't feel shy about inviting other people to dinner. Don't take it bad if you invite someone and they can't make it or they have other plans. A lot of times people have plans with their coworkers or people way beyond before this conference even started. So don't worry about that. But I would say try to soak up as much much relationship building, people building while you're there. So don't skip out on those things. Now, obviously, if you're feeling sick, maybe that's a reason why you don't want to. But I would definitely try to go to as many events as you can. And like I said, don't worry about if someone else is busy. Just it's okay going by yourself. And that's one thing I noticed when I was at VueConf. They had people raise their hands of if this was the first time going to a conference. I would say like a good, I don't know, 2/3 probably said this was their first, not 2/3, maybe 1/3, 1/4 said they were there by themselves. And maybe 1/3 said this was their, or maybe close to 1/2 said this was their first Vue conference. So keep that in mind too. That there's gonna be a lot of people. It's gonna be their first conference, and they're probably going to. They're probably also going to be by themselves. There's going to be a lot of people by themselves, and it's okay to talk to people. One trick I do too is if I really don't want to meet with anybody, I'll go to the conference during the day. I'll go to like a sushi bar or someplace where I can just sit and eat at a bar table. I'll eat, and then I'll go to the after parties and events and things like that. And that works for me too. All right, I got more tips. Don't Here's another one. I've seen this all the time. Don't get on your phone. This is during a talk, at least. So I see so many people like they're just sitting down there, and this happens to everyone. You get a little tired. You don't want to go through the rest of the conference. Uh, Hi, Aldrin. Thanks for making it. Hi, Mohit. I see this. People just get bored during conferences, or maybe it's a talk that you're not really interested in, and then people just instantly like they're on their phones or they're on their laptops. Now, you can't really judge someone to be on their laptop because this is a developer focused. I'm assuming we're talking about developer conferences here, and they might actually be trying out the demos in live, or they might be taking notes. So I don't really care too much if someone's on their laptop, but I do care if like someone's on their phone. So at least try to pay attention. So it's okay to have your laptop open if you're taking notes or you're trying the demos out, but at least try to pay attention and that's why you're there. Even if you're getting a little tired. And it's okay too to like if it's in the middle of the talk and you're not feeling great, just really quietly like sneak out of the room. It's okay to do that. I wouldn't like do that for every talk. Some people might get bothered by that, but it's okay to like leave in between talks, or if you're not feeling it, you can kind of sneak out. Just don't be loud. That's another quick tip. Another tip kind of goes with number one is, but say hi to the speakers. Like I am starting to do a lot more speaking, and I love it when people come up to me and they've watched, or at least they paid attention during my talk and asked follow-up questions, or they've known me from somewhere else and they just want to say thank you. It's like so nice to hear from people. So don't feel afraid to not go up to speakers. Most people are pretty friendly. Even if they're in a group with other people, it's okay to like kind of talk to them, pull them away. People do it all the time. Trust me. I've been in groups with people that have just done talks, and people just pull them away, and that's fine. Like, don't worry about bothering anyone. Just say hi to the speakers, let them know you appreciate them, ask them follow-up questions. One thing I've done a lot too is if someone approaches me during a conference or a talk, they want to connect, I will put those people at like the top level of my connection. So there's a way in LinkedIn, you can click the search bar and you can have a QR code. So I'll just show my QR code to everybody. And so they can all scan it with their phones, and then we can connect on LinkedIn real quickly. I'll also tell them just to follow me on Twitter at EricCH. And if someone from a conference messages me, get some water. If someone from a conference messages me and we just connected on LinkedIn, they like get top priority of my time. So usually I get lots of different messages on Twitter and LinkedIn. But if it was someone that had met me in person, like they go to the top of my list of getting back to people, because I think that's just a nice thing to do. And if they spent time coming to my talk, I'm going to spend some time answering their questions or following up with whatever they wanted to talk to me about. Cool. So yeah, those are like kind of like 6 quick conference tips for developers. And I just kind of wanted to kind of get that out of the way since we're talking about conferences. Now, I do have a couple of other things I'm thinking of. So if you're watching right now, leave a comment in the chat. But a part of the title of this live stream was 5 developer secrets and helpful conference tips. Uh, so I thought maybe I can spend a little bit of time talking about some more tips. Or if you guys are interested, I can go into talking about Svelte. But I think I'm just going to talk about some tips too. All right, so let me find my tips. I made some notes beforehand because I'm organized. Okay. Let's see here. Okay. I have some tips here. Okay. So the next part of this is I'm just going to give some tips here. So we'll talk about 5 developer secrets and tips. Okay. So I've been thinking about this lately, like some tips for developers, and what that means. So yeah, let's jump into here. So these tips are kind of for a developer at any level, but maybe these are a little bit more for new developers. But these are things that I keep hearing. So the last probably like 3 or 4 weeks, I've been traveling a whole bunch of different places in the US. I went to VueConf, and then I went to Render Atlanta, and then I went to New York for a meetup there. And I'm kind of seeing like the same patterns here, especially talking to a lot of new developers who have never worked in the software developer industry, or even those that have been here for a while. I kind of see some of these patterns. So I thought I would kind of make talk about a little bit here and see, if you guys agree or don't agree. All right. So this is the first one. Uh, People are always saying it's what you know, but it's really not what you know. It's how can you find the problem? How can you solve a problem? So what I mean by that, so I hear this over and over again, especially with new developers. People are just so scared. It's like there's so many things to learn. Like, how is the software developer every day supposed to know how to do front end development, know the intricacies of React? React server components just came out, so people are all talking about that. And how are they supposed to know all these things? But the reality is, as you go from a beginner to intermediate to like a senior developer, is that it's not about what you know. It's about how you can solve a problem and how you can figure out issues. So some of the best developers I know, they haven't memorized every single crazy thing out there. That like they haven't memorized every single edge case out there and everything that pops up in their day-to-day work. What they are much better at and what they are really good at is solving problems that happen to them on a day-to-day basis. So that is like super, super important to them. And so what they are really good is once they run into a problem, they know how to Google and try to find the answer. They remember and find patterns and things that happened in the past, and they're able to use their knowledge to fix the problem, because there's just so many things to know in software development that it's impossible to know everything. So most of your job is not uh, a lot of your job is creating things you've done in the past, but a lot of the job and the most challenging parts of the job is being a good problem solver. So if anything else, if you want to be a good developer, become better at problem solving. It's just, that's the way you need to kind of approach it. Okay, second tip. Let me know if these tips are helping in the chat. Yeah, let me know if that's helping if you're watching right now. And it's kind of the second corollary to that I want to talk about is we don't all Google won't solve everything. So this is kind of the misconception I hear, is like 90% of software development is just Googling. And there is some truth to that, but there's a lot of exaggeration in there. And what I mean is that I really think to be a good software developer and a good developer, a secret to this is to learn the basics, and don't Google everything. You need to learn how things work. If everything you do as a software developer is just Google everything all the time, you are going to be so inefficient that it's going to take you 10 times longer than a good developer that knows these things. So I would highly recommend, if you are trying to up your game, spend some time. When you run into a problem, don't Google it right away. Try to learn it, especially at the beginning. You need to learn these basics because the time it takes you to solve problems is going to be extremely important, because your time is really valuable. So don't Google everything. This is kind of going against the grain of much you might have heard in the past, but learn the basics. Try to memorize it so you can move faster. It will definitely help you. And some kind of examples of that, especially with web development, is how the DOM works. You should understand how to do queries and things like that. You should understand basically what the DOM is. You should know how to do basic flex and grid items. So many times I've interviewed people and I've asked them to create a basic layout and they struggle. Like, they don't understand how to display, display flex and justify content and align items, and how to center items on the screen. They don't understand how to use gap, justify. It's just template row columns. Template. They just don't know any of that. So it becomes really difficult for them to do basic things because they have learned in their brain that, hey, I'm going to create a website. Let me Google everything. Or nowadays, it's like, let's look up on ChatGPT. So the third one is ChatGPT shouldn't be a crux, but you can sometimes use it. Hey, Saf, I am streaming on both Twitch and YouTube at the same time. So I am trying to simulcast stream. So ChatGPT, this is kind of the new thing that I keep seeing everywhere. He's like, I'm starting a new project. I'm just jump into ChatGPT. It might be like a good start to just kind of figure some things out, but it can be a crux. It can be something where you aren't learning and you're just kind of copying and pasting. It's same thing like going with Google. Same thing with like using Stack Overflow answers all the time. Use it as like a tool to maybe help you go faster, but you need to learn basically what you're Googling and what you're doing. So don't let it become like a thing where every single time you can't create a new project without using ChatGPT, because that will put you at a disadvantage. Same thing with Google. I love ChatGPT. I've been using it in my projects, especially when I'm trying to learn something new for the first time. But I quickly find that it has its limitations. It hallucinates a lot, especially with code. It gives me methods that don't exist. And so I don't think it's like that great of a tool yet, but I also think things are going to get much better in the future. But I would definitely use it as more of a like double checking tool, maybe just right at the beginning for some very simple use cases. But I would strive to learn those things that I'm using with ChatGPT. Okay. Safo has a question. Wait, let me see here. I'm going to try this out. Hate to be the guy, but it's probably a crutch, right? Yeah, ChatGPT, I definitely think is a crutch. Yeah, for sure. And then Flexbox and Grid is so hard to be good at. My gosh, yeah, to be really good. Well, let me think about this. So Flexbox and Grid are amazing tools that you can use to create layouts. It's kind of the standard way. It's taking the place of floats, if you remember that from years and years ago. To use, I would say the tools themselves, to learn the basics of it, it's literally like an hour or two of looking at the documentation. There's a million great courses on it. I really like Wes Boss's Flexbox guide. I've been using, I think it's called, there's a couple of games too I've used. Like, what's that, Flexbox Pad? I can't remember. There's a couple of really cool games too. I'd have to look it up. So learning the basics isn't hard, but like mastering it to the point where you can take any design, like a sketch design, Photoshop, Figma, and then turn it into a pixel perfect design. That's the hard part. especially when you're dealing with really weird edge cases where you need to place things at very specific points, or you're trying to do animations. I think that's much harder in the CSS world. And so that's where I would say that's where I would say it's hard. ChatGPT probably isn't going to help you with things like that either. Yeah, Flexbox Froggy. That's it. Exactly. Yep. Flexbox Froggy. That's a really fun course to take. I think everybody who's learned Flexbox at one time has taken Flexbox Froggy. They have a grid one too. Yeah, let's continue on with some other tips that I have here. To round it out, let's go to another kind of secret, but maybe pretty obvious to some people. Is I can't create a PR or create an app without bugs. If you look at my code, a lot of my code is open source. You'll see that every single pull request I put up, there's at least one comment about, hey, there's an issue here, or you could have redesigned it better this way. So just keep in mind that things it's normal. You're going to create software. It's going to have bugs in it. Obviously, if everything you put out, every single PR is really buggy, that's an issue. But occasionally that will happen, and it's really hard to create software that's perfectly bug free, and it's okay. That's why we have definitely before it goes into production, we have people that do PR reviews on it. We create unit tests. We have end-to-end tests, things that we're going to test our apps into like production as if they were used by real users. So I've seen this a few times where people think that like they need to create perfect code, or they're really worried that the code they're going to put out is not going to be elegant enough, or that it's going to be buggy. And as a senior developer, I've been doing software development for 10 plus years. This is normal. Your apps and code is going to have bugs in it. They're going to have idioms that aren't right, and you just need to keep that in mind. Let's see here. Does this work? Show? Maybe that's too big. So Byron says, here it is. It's more important to understand how you want to solve a problem than memorize syntax for everything. Syntax is the easiest thing of the software world. That is a great way to put it, Byron. So you don't want to learn the actual, you don't want to memorize everything. Yeah, learn the how behind it. Exactly. Well put. Definitely. Before you look it up too. That's even good part. And here's another good one. If you aren't finding any bugs on the first version of solutions, then you haven't tested all of these cases. Exactly. I have written code where I think it's so elegant and it's so well done, and then my reviewers look at it and like, oh, hey, you missed this one case here. Oh, this could be better here. And it's also, as someone that writes code, it's good to be able to like, oh, I understand that, and I'm not going to be defensive. I'm like, okay, that's a good point. And you understand like that's just the way software works. I have one more, but I have a question here. Thoughts on front end testing? I always find that very tricky. Yeah, this is a good question. I think, well, let me show you kind of what the front end testing we do here at Amazon, at least for some of our open source projects. So if we go to GitHub Amplify UI, this is the Amplify UI repo that I worked in, and we have a number of layers of kind of testing and things that we use in our apps. So for the first part is that like look at our React package here. If we look at React and we look at our test folder, we do snapshot testing. So we have all our components. We have a bunch of what we call them primitives, which are like buttons and drop downs, things like that. Every one of them are snapshot tested. So that way we know if we make any weird changes to CSS and the look feel changes, that it's not going to break anything. And then on top of that, if we go back into like, let's say some of our primitives, we run tests for every single one of our primitives. And so we're checking, well, first we're using the our testing library through React. So we're using Jest and testing library. We're using unit tests in this case. And I really like this because it helps promote accessibility. So we're using these find by test IDs. And then we test rigorously for all the different things. So for this component, we're testing like, can it render a heading for the alert? So we're passing in the heading prompt. We're doing a bunch of expects to be true. And we're trying to do this throughout it. So we want to make sure that we have very clear code coverage. We have code coverage reports. So we have built-in CI/CD code checks. That way, if you push up a PR, if it lowers the code coverage down from, I think it's 80% on our components to lower, then you can't merge it in. We also have complete end-to-end tests. You can look here. We have a whole end-to-end package, and we're using Cypress. And right now, I think we have, here's our fixtures that we have. But if we go to integrations, common UI, components, let's say authenticator, we have lots and lots of different tests, specifically on our more advanced components, to just test exactly everything out the way it's supposed to work. So here, features UI, I think these are where they all are. Account settings. And we also do it in this cucumber way. So we have this kind of human readable way of creating tests, like customize the default component. When I type my email, the status confirm, then I see these are all like checks, expects, and these all convert over to Cypress functions. So to go over it all, we do a lot of testing, and I think front-end testing is really important, especially for any production app. And obviously we use TypeScript everywhere too. Let's see here. Safel has a question. Is it ever possible to check positioning in front-end tests? Sorry, there's too many questions. What do you mean by positioning in front-end tests? Yeah, give me a little more information on that. Yeah, Gherkin. Yep, exactly. Byron, you are 100% right. So that's the library we're using, this Gherkin. Gherkin. I can't even, it's, I wonder if I can get back to it. Oops. GitHub. I love this autocomplete. Okay, GitHub Amplify UI. Yeah, so if we go to our end-to-end tests and our packages and end-to-end, and we look at our package JSON, we use Cucumber here, and I believe it also has Gherkin too. I could find it. I would find it if I had time. But we do that type of like Cucumber testing, human readable, things like that. Let's see here. Yeah, let me know with Safel what you mean by your question. I'm not sure. All right, let's go back to Scala draw. Okay, so the last point I wanted to make for my tips. I hope these are helpful for people who are watching right now. Oh, well, this kind of goes along with this. People are asking questions about tests, but this kind of goes along with it. But I think truly that software quality is subjective. So there's, and what I mean by that is that the next person who looks at your software or app, let's say app, will always think they can do it better. And the reason I say this is that no matter how many end-to-end tests you put in, how many unit tests you put in, how often you go through and you put in comments and everything, people are always going to say there's always ways to make it even better. I suppose there's always going to be a more clever way to rewrite a function. There's always going to be an easier way to do it. And so I think as you go along in this world, you're going to hear a lot of opinions. You're going to hear people say that front end testing isn't really worthwhile because we do contract testing in the back end. Or we'll hear like, well, we have TypeScript testing and we have unit tests. We really don't need end-to-end tests. Or we'll hear end-to-end tests are all that needs to be, and that unit tests and code coverage is useless. And I've been around this lap so many times where I have different teams of people saying like, we don't need to do an 80% code coverage. Code coverage is useless. And then I go into another team and they'll be like, we need 80% code coverage. And then they'll have a list. They'll have very opinionated ideas of why they think that it is. But I've come to kind of realize that it really depends, and that software quality is really subjective. Like there's no one way of doing software and doing testing that is the right way. It's going to be different for every single team. Some teams will need end-to-end tests, unit tests, full testing, and spend a lot of time at. Others might not need as much, depending on the app, and that's okay. And no matter what you do, there's probably going to be a time when your software will be considered legacy and it'll be considered old, and that you're going to have people who come in and look at your legacy software and they're going to be like, this is done the wrong way, and they'll want to rewrite it from scratch. And that's kind of just how software is. Like the patterns and the things that we do today are not going to be relevant tomorrow. Things are going to change. We're going to find better ways to do it. And so I think like overall, it's very subjective, and you shouldn't spend your life trying to be like find perfection in software quality. It's always going to be changing. And there's always going to be people that come from your team too. This is what typically happens. You'll work on a team. There'll be very gung-ho people like, we need to have this level of quality. They're going to insist on these standards. And then those people will leave and some new people will come in who don't have the same sort of standards, and they'll put in their stuff. And eventually these software projects become bloated. The software quality goes down. It's maybe subjectively worse, you could say. And then someone will come in and want to rewrite the whole thing. So just keep that in mind during your software development career. Okay, I got some questions here. Let's see here. That's the same thing as using crow's feet notation for an ERD. Gherkin is just a stylistic name, if I recall. Okay. The first job of Byron's saying the first job of a developer is to make it work. The second job is to make it maintainable. Maintainable software can mean a lot of different things, but boils down to software you can support. And that's good. That's a good way to put it. Is that's another thing too. As I move through the software world, is that there's the opinion, especially with startups, like you just need to get it out the door. We got to get it working. Like, and some companies, even bigger companies, are like, we got to get this out the door. We don't care as much about this super subjective software quality as others. And it just really depends too. And definitely maintainable is something that you need to keep in mind, because what happens is if you don't have it maintainable, it's hard to keep adding and keeping it running in the long term. So I think those are similar ideas as well. It's a good point out. Okay, Safel has come back with his question on to check the positioning in a front-end tests. Like, let's say a footer. Okay, let's see if this works. Okay, like let's say a footer should remain sticky at the bottom, or like 4 cards should be shown in a row in cases we have a screen of larger than 800 pixels or something. So no, I would never do testing on like to check to see if a footer was sticky at the bottom, or like 4 cards could be shown in a row on screen at 800 pixels or something. You can do testing where you check different screen sizes. So I would kind of put this back in the snapshot testing, that if you wanted to, you can definitely do snapshot and then do it that way. If I was going to test that specific, I'd almost create like an end-to-end test and then test it on mobile versus others. I would never like do a test to check to see if like a sticky's at the bottom. What I could possibly do though is like do a snapshot test to make sure that things are where you seem to be and things are looking okay. Then I'd probably eyeball it, just like, does this look right on these different screen sizes? Maybe make a snapshot test. I would maybe make an integration test that would check to see like the sticky actually appears, If that's something like this, if the footer like shows on some pages and doesn't show on another, I might make a test like that. So that's kind of how I'd approach that. Probably have to think about it a little bit more. Probably could do a few more tests as well. All right. So this is my 5 developer secrets and tips. I hope you guys found that useful. I think I'm gonna wrap it up here. We're about an hour in. Hope you guys learned a few things. I'm gonna be doing another live stream soon on Tuesday. So on Tuesday on the AWS channel at 9 a.m. Pacific time, I will be back for another live stream. It's going to be for our front end and mobile dev hour. It's a new show on Twitch on my AWS channel, on the AWS channel. So check that out on Twitch if you're there. Thanks for everybody. I appreciate it. Take care. I'm going to see you.